Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to Positive Talk, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald. I hope that you're going to hang with us for the entire hour. We've got a great author who became an author because he promised his mom something. And we're going to get into all that. And he's had an adventure of a lifetime. And his mother had a really big adventure. And there's some things that I'd like to talk to him about during the course of this show. His mother was born in China, grew up in China, and faced, communism there, and also faced what it was like to come here because she came here with her step parents, and what it was like for her to try and become a citizen here and that sort of thing, because it was pretty complicated from what I understand. So we're going to get into all that. His name is Richard Sung 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 Sung. and and he's the author of the book Spring Flower. There are three of them. Correct? There are three, right?
Yep. Mhm.
And he's got, and it's broken up into time periods from 1931 to 51, 51 to 70, and 70 to 2014. And it's a story about his mom. It's a story about, really, it's a historical novel, or what would you call it? Would you call it an historical novel? Would you call it a biopic? What would you call it?
Oh, yeah. So, I'm sorry. Foremost, thank you so much, Kevin, for having me back.
Oh, sorry.
I appreciate
I
I
need
appreciate
this.
this.
I should have
Yes.
let
So,
you have a moment to say that.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
no problem. Yes. Her memoir became a trilogy, uh, marking three pretty different periods of her life, and I would say you're absolutely correct. It's a less of a memoir, more of a chronology or a witness account to history for a better part of uh, 20th century. Yep.
And the thing is, it's history that we here in the United States don't necessarily get in a history book. We don't talk about what happened in Asia to a great degree, especially during the time of World War II, and which lasted a whole bunch longer over there than it did here. And stuff. So it was interesting for me to talk to you last time. I'm excited to talk to you again because there is a ton of history that happened in that 100 years, or is it 100? Yeah, 31, almost 100 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so and I know. Tell me the story again of how you ended up writing this material. I know that you spent your youth having your mom be watching and or be writing stuff down in journals and things, and she did that quite a little bit. Tell me a little bit about that and how you ended up being the author of this trilogy.
Yeah. So my mother and I arrived in the States in the early 1980s, and then soon after, a lot of people began to tell my mom whenever she had a chance to tell her stories that you got to put these things down on a piece of paper and publish it as a book. And so eventually, she decided to go for it. And then I was still in high school, and I actually helped her out a little bit in terms of filing and organizing some of her photos and letters inherited from her adopted American parents. And so, but she spent perhaps about 10, 12, maybe tops 12 years or so writing it. And then ultimately, she succumbed to dementia. She was in a nursing home. And then in year 2014, January, I guess, I went to see her and greeted her with Happy New Year. And by that time, she was already in that same nursing home bed for about a decade and been battling Alzheimer's or a form of dementia, another form of dementia, about 15 or 16 years. And so I just asked her casually that if why are you hanging in there and not wanting to go somewhere that you can be free, whether it's upstairs somewhere or anywhere or on the other side. And I think before I left, I said, I think I know why. Perhaps you're waiting to find out who potentially will complete your memoir. And I said, then how about I'll do it, and if you promise me to leave in peace whenever you're ready. And it turned out that just 3 months later, she passed away as if she had heard me. And that was when I realized, oh my goodness, what did I just do? I'm glad she's free, but then what am I gonna do? And so when I got inherited 3 boxes of her manuscripts, over 1,000 pages, typed chapters, handwritten notes, and handwritten stories, and a note, a title here and there. It was extremely daunting, and I believe at the time, at the moment, I regretted it.
It's like, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Yes.
You never know. I wanted to ask you because I haven't had anybody close to me succumb to dementia and or Alzheimer's and stuff. What's that like to watch somebody that you love so deeply just kind of end up fading away? And what do you think it was like for her?
Yeah. The word is fading away. It's like a death sentence, and then but it's a slow death, and then you just. At one point, I think I was doing some writing. I was already in grad school, and then because I read a couple of articles about dementia and Alzheimer, and that was right around the time when America, when the U.S. has became aware of this is actually a real issue down the road for the geriatric population, and so it's almost like somebody is closing your gravestone or the cover to your coffin, but ever so slowly and to suffocate you slowly, and you stop seeing the light. And so I think it's one of the most excruciating ways to die. And I think I experienced some, my father experienced tremendously. And he used a similar phrase that this guy who was a writer for New Yorker, Kelvin Chulian, I believe. I stand correct if people can fact check me. I think his wife suffered from dementia, and he wrote an article. And there was a phrase in there I still remember. He says it's like a chained to a corpse. And so that was, yeah. So it's a tremendous amount of strain, not just on the person, but actually mostly on people around that person, the families and friends, I guess.
Do you think, and I don't know this, and I've been meaning to ask somebody who's been through it a little bit. Do you think that she knew this going as she was going down this road, or was there a point in time when she ceased to really be cognitively aware of her decline or where she was at? Or then did it become like a day to day, time to have breakfast, okay, time to have lunch, okay, time to have dinner, time to go to
Yeah.
bed? What was
I think it may be different for different people, and most likely that would be true. But for my mother, I believe the general features were there, and I think she probably was highly aware of her deterioration mentally, cognitively, and that was a very painful period for her because she was brilliant, right? She was an ophthalmologist, she was a surgeon, and she did the highest level of research work on glaucoma and published papers in that area. So for her to, and then she was very proud, and so for her to actually eyewitnessing herself deteriorating and losing it, it was very painful. But then there was like it's a blurry line. At one point in time, it will appear to me that she stopped worrying about the fact that she was losing her mental capacity. But before that, it was very frustrating. And I think a lot of people also mentioned that too, is when they were aware that they were deteriorating, they're losing their cognitive functions. They're the most agitated because they don't know they wouldn't know what to do, right? Except watching themselves going down, going downhill, right?
Yeah, I kind of look at it like I'm a little older now, and occasionally my brain will be searching for a word, and it used to be that that word was just there. It is. Hi, how are you? And here we go. Now sometimes it's like that word just doesn't show up, and you know.
I'm laughing because I'm not laughing at you, but with you. I'm just a couple years younger than you. I'm already doing that. And this morning I left my coffee mug in the microwave, and I'm thinking, wait, what happened to my coffee mug? I was actually microwaving the coffee. But it took a while to find it, but I found it, and I think they said to me, because I'm actually conscious about this, right? Conscientious about this, and so but they say if you know you've forgotten about something, then you're fine. It's when you stop
Yeah.
knowing, and that's the fine line.
Yeah, because my grandmother she was going through this, and there was a point in time to when she knew that she wasn't quite right,
Mhm.
but she didn't want anybody else to know that she wasn't quite right. So she would hide the fact that she couldn't remember things and stuff,
Yeah.
so that she would not have to deal with it. But she knew in her own mind that she wasn't the same as she used to be. And then, but there came a point in time to where she was like, I don't know who you are, but thank you for coming to visit me.
Yes, I think my mother did a significant share of that, and then there was one point in time I would then decided. Well, I decided that I should stop arguing with her because I think something is not quite right. At that time, I wasn't sure what it was yet. It was like a late 1990s. And then once I started finding out what she was suffering from, I regretted the arguing for the fact that, wait, mom, this is not Chicago. This is New York. You know New York City. And then she'll be, no, I've been to Chicago. I know Chicago. What?
Yeah.
So yes, so I think they do find ways. My mother found ways to camouflage herself and try to get by and to hide, right? To
Yeah.
hide her
And
conditions. Mhm.
I really appreciate that happens to a lot of people, and it's very, very hard on their loved ones and the people that know them over time. But that's part of what we all get to look forward to. Not all of us. Some of us get to look forward to that. Some of us get to look forward to being the caregivers and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But your mom had such an incredible life, and I know that you are very proud of her because you wrote these 3 books, and you wouldn't have done it had you not been very proud of them, and it starts with a book that looks like that, Spring Flower.
I'm very proud of my mother. I'm hoping my mother is equally proud of me
Oh, I
sometimes.
guarantee you.
Thank you for
I
saying that.
guarantee I you mentioned the other side. I know that she is healthy, she is happy on the other side. She's looking down at you and saying, "Richard, thank you. You did what I needed you to do because the story of my life is worth being told."
I love that, and I think that's an extremely positive way of putting it, and I will take it. Yeah.
Well, I mean it that exactly that way because I know that that was her mission in life. She spent 10 years s- writing all these notes and putting them into some sort of order and stuff so that her life could be told. And now, because of what you've done, you've created a legacy that she is going to live on through this book forever. And so from that standpoint, that congratulations. You should be very, very proud of what you've done.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And I believe I should. I should be proud of this. With a lot of help from many different people, even including right now, present company included, right? Promoting this set of books require people such as yourself. Right? So I'm incredibly grateful also for all the help. I've had.
Well, and it's all part of the I believe it's all part of the great human experience that we all get to have. And my job is to help you. And the fact of the matter is your story and your mom's story is so compelling and it's so timely of what happens in from being all the way when she was born, a female in China in 31, and her they didn't consider well, you tell the story about how your mother was born and how she ended up with a couple of missionaries, not mercenaries.
Yeah, right. So she was born 1931 during a catastrophic river flood. The river's name is Yangtze River, and uh, I think the flood basically killed upwards of 4 million people between drowning and post-flood starvation and infectious diseases. And so that was a bad start. And then she was she was a baby girl, so the odds became stacked against her because even though China had improved their treatment of girls and women by early 20th century, now, owing to Western missionaries raising awareness of human rights, especially women's rights, but in the rural area, like in the farming town that my mother was born, she was born in dire poverty, born into dire poverty, and so they were just ready to give her away, if not leaving her on the sidewalk to die, because girls are not valued as because they can't carry on a family's name, which is irrational, but also they're not considered useful laborers, so we're just going to be giving away our soul to other families.
I
But
find
because yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say
Mhm,
I find it really interesting that in those days
mhm.
when there was a lot of poverty going on and guys were farming and stuff, you didn't go hire a workforce. You'd made one for yourself. You had children,
Yeah.
and they became your workforce.
Yes.
And boys
Yep.
could do physically could do a lot more than girls at the time or were allowed to.
Yep. And I think
And so
much similar to the
she ended
Western
up
world, right? So mhm,
yeah.
something. Yeah.
That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
Although these days, if we are getting closer to where we have equal rights for women and taking good care.
Oh,
We're
I
closer.
agree.
We're not there yet.
We have made tremendous amount of progress as a race, as a humanity, as far as humanity goes. But yeah, but I guess gender discriminatory practices continue to this day, right? So my mother's biological mother was looking for milk and food for her baby girl, and she was kind enough that she wasn't considered just leave her to die on the sidewalk. And that's when they found the refugee camp that's set up by Western missionaries, my American missionaries, and my American grandparents were there, and that's how they met. Yes.
Isn't that amazing? Because you think about the fact that your mother was born into a poor family, but there also was this flood that killed 4 million people,
Yeah.
and and she survived that and stuff. So she was very special. That
Yes.
she survived
Yes.
all of that,
Right
and
on.
then ended up with missionaries.
Yeah, and then lived a very charmed, idyllic childhood for about 11 years before coming to America during World War II. And so, yeah, so missionary Western missionaries, they don't make that much money, and my grandparents basically pay themselves out of their own pockets. And so, but yet, when dollars were pretty strong, right, in 1930s, when you go to a impoverished country like China, you could still live pretty affluently, and you have people to do your gardening, and you have people to do your laundry and things of that sort. So then my mom just basically witnessed that but contrast, a huge contrast, right? Of course, she was 10 months, 11-month old when she went to this American family, being adopted by my American grandparents, and so right, so she definitely had a charmed childhood, and at one point in time, uh, because you mentioned that she is she was very special, one out of millions, right? At one point, the title of the book was going to be "Daughter of the Flood" or "Princess of the Flood," and
Ah.
but they were they were not chosen. So, yeah.
But you know, when you think about it, that and I mentioned it the last time I talked to you that we don't have much working knowledge history wise in this country in our history books about a flood in China that killed 4 million people. I don't know that I ever heard that before I talked to you, and that's which is really kind of sad. But at the same time, your mother made it through that. Then she ended up with missionaries, and then she ended up in the United States somehow. How'd that
Yeah. So that's also so during World War II, well, post Pearl Harbor, what December 7th, 8th, correct me.
December 7th,
Yeah,
1941, a day that will
1941.
live in infamy.
Yes, and so then America, U.S. and England declare war on Japan, right? So so suddenly there were all these Americans, also British citizens, scattered in Japan and China and Southeast Asia. And then so to get them home, uh, President Roosevelt came up with a plan. It's a POW exchange, and it was a partially hidden history that most kids didn't learn about until maybe American people didn't learn about until maybe in the 1980s. And so my mother became one of the two Chinese nationals that were among thousands, 1,500 Americans and being exchanged with so-called Japanese war prisoners, rounded up from South America first and also from America. Of course, we knew, right, many of those so-called Japanese prisoners, they were actually Japanese American citizens that were already rounded up in internment camps shortly after uh, Pearl Harbor. And so my mother was actually exchanged with them, along with these other Americans, her American parents, on this mercy ship called Gripsholm. It's one of the first diesel powered motor ship for transatlantic passenger shipping passengers between Europe and America. It's a Swedish ship, and because I guess Sweden wasn't part of the war, right? Was not part of the war. All right, but anyway, that ship became called Mercy ship because it was used for multiple prisoner POW exchange. And so my mother became part of that history and ultimately landed in New York Harbor and spent about 3 years living in Yonkers, New York. So
That's it. That is amazing all by itself. By the way, we're talking. I'm going to try it here. We'll see. Richard Hung Sung
Chung.
Sung Sung
Yeah,
Sung.
that's
Richard
perfect.
Sung. I knew I'd get it.
Yeah.
My tongue doesn't necessarily work all that well. We need to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to more with Richard about Spring Flower, the trilogy of books that is written by his mother through him and is now available to come to you. We'll be right back. You're listening to Positive Talk.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk. By the way, Richard, do you like rock music?
Yes, I do.
Oh, good.
70s, 80s. Yep.
When, when you were just a wee little lass, you were the 70s and 80s.
Okay, 60s too. Yep.
Oh, very good. Very good. I was born in 57, and so the 60s were in my wheelhouse, as were the 70s and 80s. And
Yeah.
then when people start talking about musicians today, tell me if this is true for you, they'll bring up the only name I know is Taylor Swift, really, and everybody else is like, I have no earthly idea who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
I know. Me too. I'm in
I
the same
bet.
boat. Yeah.
Well, our time in popular music has passed, but it was a good time back then. I'll tell you.
Golden age.
Absolutely, it was the golden
Yeah,
age.
right.
But we're talking with you about your book, Spring Flower, that is really about your mom. I wanted to ask you because she made it over to New York, and this was post World War II a little
Uh,
bit.
so 41 to 45. Oh, sorry,
What?
42 to 45, right? By the time she landed in New York, it would be summer of 1942.
Oh, well, see now, what was interesting about that is on the West Coast at that time,
Mm-hmm.
Japanese nationals were all being put into internment camps.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, because she's Asian, we're not very smart, us Americans, and so we might consider her, because she's Asian to be Japanese rather than Chinese. And what the hell's the difference between them? They're all
Yeah, they look like. Yep. Mm-hmm. They definitely do look like. Yep.
it's like
Look
it's
alike. Yep. Mm-hmm.
well, it's like
That's fine.
for those of you that are having problems recognizing that there's that Japanese people and Chinese people kind of look alike, well, German people and people from England and France, they look alike too. So it's we're just a different shade, if you will. And so, did she have any troubles during World War II being here in the States because of her gender and her ethnicity?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Uh, from her writings, her notes, and then some of the letters I had, overall, she had a very peaceful 3 years living in Yonkers, finishing elementary school in Yonkers, and then attended junior high. And she made many friends, and they're all Caucasians, right? Euro Americans. And she only mentioned like one occasion, some kid, some boy called her a Jap, right? That's a derogatory word for Japanese, right? So,
Right.
and then she said, she, she said, I turned around, said to him that, wait, you're wrong. I'm Chinese. I'm not Japanese. And that was the only altercation or occasion where she found somebody uh, was not, I guess, as kind. Of course, like Japan and America were at war, right? So, but other
Well,
than that, she had a very peaceful time. That was
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because
Mhm.
the other thing is that there was a difference between how the Japanese on the West Coast were treated
Ah,
versus the Japanese on the East Coast, because they weren't
yep.
put into internment camps if you were from like New York, and only because they were scared
Let's see.
of spies on the West Coast and that kind of thing, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah. Huh. Okay. I see. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
so it was, but I'm glad that she did well. But she was only here for 3 or 4 years. Then after the war, did she go back?
Yeah. So literally on on V Day or close to us, or May 8th, right, 1945. She
Right.
found herself on a U.S. battleship with her parents on their way back to Asia, but going the other way. So they went towards Africa, and ultimately landed in India, and they were going to go into China from the western border through Burma. But American missionaries, medical missionaries in India said that you better not go back because the Pacific War was still ongoing. Japan hadn't surrendered yet, or I'm so sorry, bombs haven't been dropped yet. Right? So then they ended up spending a year in India, and India also desperately needed medical personnel, medical missionaries. So my mother spent a year in a British boarding school called Woodstock on the Himalaya mountains, and that was a unique experience for her for about a year before they finally came back to China in 1946. Her
Well,
her parents just wanted to continue their medical mission in China. They didn't really ask her if she wanted to stay,
oh,
finish high school or maybe go to college. Yeah. Mhm.
that's it. So let me get this straight. there was a place in India called Woodstock.
Yeah, so it's a British boarding school. It's still in existence today. Right on, really on the Himalayas mountains. Not the tallest peak, but high enough where you have to really get used to high altitude.
See, I thought that Woodstock was in New York.
Yes, there's another this is called Woodstock School, I guess. I don't know where the name came from, but
But Jimi Hendrix wasn't there, or any of those guys. But there was somebody that they met that was pretty famous in India, as I recall. Didn't
yes, Muhammad Gandhi. They saw him on one of his hunger strikes and surrounded by a lot of people. And I think that's when my mother asked my American grandfather, who is this person. My American grandfather told her that this is Gandhi, who is who is using his peaceful demonstration to win independence for the nation.
Isn't that interesting that you met somebody who went, or your mom met somebody that went down in history as being Mahatma Gandhi, which
Yeah.
is a name that will live on for forever. I was mentioning to somebody in the last hour that do you remember the movie Forrest Gump?
Yes. One of my favorites. Yep.
Your mother's story would work if you intertwined it with what was going on in history throughout the 30s and the 40s and where she was and in New York, and then meeting Gandhi and that kind of stuff. That would be a very interesting trilogy to put together.
You are way too perceptive. Right on. The reason I say that, because you are, but the other reason, at one point in time, I was telling people that the first part of her memoir, or this first volume of first of the 3 volumes, really resonate with the movie Forrest Gump, right? Because there were plenty of other incidences where, for example, on her way back from Lake George, Silver Bay, she would spend her summer camps there, and then she was on this Pullman train. The First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt, was seated 2 rows behind her. Yep. And she didn't know who that person was until my American grandmother told her that this is our First Lady. And so she was shocked that in those days, you don't have 20,000 black Jeeps following you wherever you go. You would, First Lady would just take a train by herself going home from Albany, right? Because they lived, New Hyde Park? That's the town, that's home.
I
Yeah,
believe
right.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So
Isn't that remarkable that now
totally remarkable. Yeah.
these guys can't go anywhere without an entourage of 20 or 30 people? And
Yes.
in those days, they got on a well, and I think it was Truman that after his days as president being done, he and his wife just got in their truck and went drove home.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, very interesting. She
It
understood a lot.
is. So anyway, if you're going to pitch that to somebody, pitch it that way, and I think it would do really well. We're talking with Robert Hsung, and I almost got it. Robert Hsung, Richard.
I was trying to.
You were gonna be a conscientious guest and not say anything.
I know, but I couldn't quite control my burst of laughing. In good humor and good spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's written the book, and it's called Spring Flower, and it's a trilogy about his mom's life from simple Chinese roots to where she became a doctor and became a very learned woman in her own right. And we're going to continue more with that when we come back. We need to take a quick break. It's just a little minute, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We have a great author, and I can't remember. I have no idea what his name is. No, I'm kidding. Richard Hsung is with us, and I wanted to ask you. I'm going to take you back into the mists of time, and I love the name of this. But tell me about the Water of Life Hospital.
So it is still functioning in existence today. And so my American grandfather was a surgeon, and so when he visited China in 1910, and then later in 1913, he noticed in this small rural fishing village, there wasn't a hospital specifically for men. I guess they segregated the sexes or genders for healthcare.
Yeah, figures.
Yeah, yeah.
And the men had the really nice place. The women had the little mat that was on the floor.
Sort of like that. And so in 1916, he married my grandmother, who was a Scottish immigrant, born and raised in Edinburgh, but moved to Yonkers, New York, when she was a teenager. And so in 1916, they got married, and they decided their honeymoon, the best way to spend their honeymoon was on a trans-Pacific ocean liner, a one-way ticket to China. And she wanted to become a missionary too, although she wasn't a physician. She taught Sunday schools, right? So she was a teacher, and so together they went to China, spent 2 years learning how to speak Chinese so they can communicate with people, and that itself is quite amazing. And so in 1918, they established a hospital called Water of Life Hospital, in a rented facility. And 1931, 13 years later, the year they adopted my mother, they used their own money, built a brand new three-story state-of-art facility to house the hospital. And that building is still standing today and being used, fully functional, and has been earmarked as a historical landmark. And so it's quite an honor. I learned that about a couple years ago. They made that building a historical landmark. And
And then,
so, yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to
Yeah.
say, because you told me that earlier that he paid his own way to China, he and his wife,
Yep.
and that they built the thing, and they did use their own money, and they what did he have, like, family money?
Yeah. So, uh, so my Perkins side of family is is a blue-blooded New England family from Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut. And so he was a son of a wealthy banker, and they had a big house in Hartford, Connecticut. And next door neighbor's name is Samuel L. Clement, pen name Mark Twain. They were family friends for generations, for many years. And then their next door neighbor is Harriet Beecher Stowe,
Oh, you're
author of
kidding me.
Tom's Cabin. Yeah, those two houses are now museums, right? My grandparents' house, my grandfather's house, were torn down at one point. So yeah, so he grew up a silver spoon outside the fact that his father passed away when he was only 6 years old, and so he and his older brother were raised by their mother. and so he was very close to his older brother and his mother. And but by the time he graduated from college and also got his MD degree, he also went for a law degree. He didn't know what he wanted to do with life. At one point in time, that he decided, uh, while searching for meaning of life, he decided to become a missionary, medical missionary. And that's how. So he inherited quite a bit of wealth from his father and his ancestors, I guess. And so he used that wealth and money to build a hospital, to pay for all the staffs that he and my grandmother hired, and yeah, to essentially fund the whole enterprise.
That is, by the way, I hate to bring this up now because I know that you promised your mom that you would write the book Spring Flower, and there are 3 books in this, and you've done a beautiful job with that. But your grandparents' story needs to be told now.
Oh, the Perkins family has been telling me that in the past few years, and I'm telling them I need a break. but yeah, and I no longer make any kind of promises.
You learned the hard way.
Yes, I did. But yeah, but well worth a book. Yes, I mean, I think. Uh, I mean, their actions and their deeds will speak volumes for those missionaries who did many good things for the world, for Africa, for Asia, for South America, for places that really needed a lot of help from the Western civilization, right? Even though Western civilization probably bludgeoned them with the imperialistic ambition, but at the same time, these missionaries reveal a glimpse of heart and humanities of Western civilization, if you will. So
Now, I got to say this about your grandma. That's how I call them, grandma, not grandmother, whatever.
yep.
Because picture, if you will, she's dating a guy, and this guy is hoity-toity. He's got some money and stuff, and he's become a doctor, or he's in the process. And he says, "Hey, guess what? I've got a great idea." What's that? She has. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a suitcase of money, and we're going to go get onto a boat. It's going to take us a month to get to where we're going. We're going to go to China, and then we're going to go into the interior of China to the Yangtze River, and we're going to build a hospital there. And I know I don't speak the language, but we'll learn the language when we get there.
I love your description. I think that's probably what happened. Exactly what you said to her.
I no doubt. It's like we can go do this, and she's like, "Wait a minute, you want me to go?" And she must have just been a saint.
Yes, according to some writings. So that's why you're right. I should write a book about my grandparents. According to some of the old writings or letters, I think my grandmother's initial reaction was a bit of surprise. Okay, so to put it mildly.
No kidding.
Right. And then, but the hardest part was for my grandfather trying to convince her parents, because she was a single child and she was already in her 30s. In those days in America, even in the West, if you're in your 30s and you're not married yet as a woman, that's kind of, I guess, old, right? So, and then she was a single child, always thought about she will take care of her parents as they get older. And then, so my grandfather was wondering how in the world he's going to try to convince them that this could be a one-way ticket. They may never see her again. And
Well, yeah.
turned out that was the easier part. They said, "Oh, sure, why not? Just go." So it's like, it took us a while to find you a husband. So now you're married. Just go wherever he. And then so for her, it took a while to really, and going from Yonkers and then taking that Trans-Pacific Ocean liner starting from the ferry terminal, San Francisco, and then stopping by Yokohama, and then finally to Shanghai, and then to the place they're going to learn language. That was total cultural shock.
Well, yeah. You think about it. First of all, they had to take a train from New York
Yeah.
to San Francisco,
Yep.
which is several days,
Yeah.
and so by that time your back is killing you, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And then you then get on a boat, and then you go down the Pacific through the locks. If the locks were they even available then? I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
Um, but I think they were. But
Yeah.
then through them, and then to Japan, which is
Mhm.
another, 3 weeks and stuff.
Yeah.
It's speak of the adventure of a lifetime. My
Yeah.
goodness.
I think took them probably about a couple months or 3 months to get to where they need to be. Needed to be. Yeah.
How did they know? And I don't know that you know this, but how did they know where to go in China? Did they have people that were there that were friends of theirs that said you should come here, or did they just keep walking until they found a suitable place and said this is where it's going to be?
So my grandfather already knew, right? He found this tiny little town that needed a hospital for him. So he was dead on that, set on that. And of course, they landed in Shanghai, and then they went to the capital city called Nanking, where they enrolled in language school. There will be these Chinese guys who were bilingual, who teach them Chinese. And so, but all along the way, American missionaries or missionaries from Europe, from England, just scattered. There were thousands of them established mission stations here and there. So they've even in Japan, right? And those are the people that later on during the war had to be shipped back in exchange with so-called Japanese POWs. So yeah, so they definitely had help where to go, what to do, plenty of help. Ultimately, they spent 2 years learning Chinese language, but they were also planning on how to build this hospital, establish this hospital. By the time they were done with the language training, they already had a blueprint, so they went to that small, tiny little town where they ultimately adopted my mother, and they just started their clinic. The first month, he operated on 300 some people by himself. He was a lone wolf, lone soldier. Until a couple years later, he had help from other medical missionaries. Yeah.
Did he have like I don't know, like anesthetic, anesthesia for them?
Oh, very difficult. The supplies, you're absolutely right. Supplies were a real problem. Medical supplies were a real problem. So yeah, so and also instruments and the things of that sort, right? So it's just, I mean, he interned at St. Luke Presbyterian Hospital just down the street from Columbia University, where he got his MD, and then he interned in the University College London to learn tropical diseases. I mean, he could have been at any one of these places where just enjoy a very good life, right? He didn't want that. He ended up in this impoverished rural fishing farming village, operating on poor Chinese people in dire poverty. And
Boy, I got to
he
tell
did
you,
that for free.
yeah, and I tell you, and I know he's no longer with us. How long ago did he pass?
He passed away in 1958. Yeah.
Oh, so he actually, well, how old was he when he was born?
Yes, great question. So when they adopted my mother, they were already well into their 40s, early 50s. Yeah. Mhm.
So in 31, they were in their 40s and 50s, and
Yes.
or for 40s and
So
and
1875, 1931 minus 1875, what is that? That's 56 for my grandfather, and 48. They're about 7 or 8 years apart. 48, 49 for my grandmother.
they had no children of their own.
No, they didn't. And for
And
whatever reasons, I never found out. And even my Perkins family, Perkins side of family, relatives, they didn't know why they didn't have kids.
well, sometimes the human parts that just don't work. The one
It's
of them had
possible.
one of those,
Yeah,
whatever that is.
it's possible. But it also, in those days, I'm wondering if a woman into her 30s, it's already not so conducive, you know? Yeah,
Well, that's also true. That's also,
it's
and
possible.
in those days, childbirth was much more risky than it is today.
Oh, yeah,
Really,
completely. Yeah.
So anyway, but their story deserves to be told as well. I'm sorry, Richard, you're gonna have to write more.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. but
Yeah.
but I hate but a voice inside me says I hate admit he's right.
Well, it would be, and that could be, and it could be a precursor to Spring Flower and the three books about your mom, and it can be about their early life and what all the things that they had to go through. Because I'll tell you, I don't think that people. I mean, you want to talk about dedication. You're throwing away your life as you know it to go to a place you've never been, and if it doesn't if it doesn't work out, it's not like you can go to the nearest airport, hop on a jet, and fly back.
Yeah,
You're there.
right, right. I
So
mean, with all things considered, anyone who wants to be a missionary, my hat off to them, right? Because wherever they're going will be very difficult, very different from their current
I have
condition.
a friend
But
that he
yeah,
yeah.
but during those days, yeah, right,
In those days, it was brutal. I can only imagine.
yes,
But
right.
I wanted to ask you too. And by the way, we're talking about Spring Flower, and this is a 3-book series about Richard's mom's and his grandparents' life in China and also America and stuff. And there was one thing I wanted to touch on, which was. We need to take a break. I'm having so much fun talking to you. I'm forgetting to take my breaks, and I never do that. So we're going to take a real quick one, and we'll be right back. And I'm going to ask him a question about when he came. At one point, he came back. His grandparents came back to the States, and they were having trouble getting their adopted daughter to become a citizen. I think that's right. We'll find out if that's right or not. We'll be right back.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
McDonald, and we're talking with Richard Hsung, and he is the author of the book Spring Flower. I'm having the best time talking to you. You know
Me
that
too.
this has been a great deal of fun for me. And then one of the things that I understand was not so much fun was at one point when your grandparents and your mom came back to the States, there was a problem with her and becoming a citizen or something along those lines. Am I correct in any of that?
Oh yeah, so the along that line, but slightly different in terms of the year. So 1950, the Korean conflict began. So shortly after Communist uh, army uh, drove the at the time I guess what they call Republican Nationalist government to Taiwan, and then my grandparents were allowed to stay, keep their hospital open, and keep their daily business as usual because they needed the healthcare, they needed the physicians, right? Skilled physicians. And so my grandparents stayed until probably a little less than a year, over a year. Korean conflict broke out, which was a proxy war between America and China. So anti-Americanism, anti-West sentiment was at an all-time high. The fever pitch was all-time high. So they had to flee the country in end of 1950, early 1951. And then my mother was a freshman at an English-speaking college 300 miles away, and she couldn't make it back to home in time with them, to leave with them. And even she could. I don't know if they had time to process her passport or her exiting permit, right? Because she was, after all, still a Chinese citizen. So she was totally cut off from her from adopted American parents from 1950 and on. So the struggle to regain her citizenship began in 1980 when she came back to the States and brought me along with her. And it took her 18 years to finally to get to get sworn in as a U.S. citizen. And she thought it was a simple repatriation process because she was lawfully adopted by American citizens in the U.S. Supreme Court of China, stationed in Shanghai in 1940. And so all those documentations were presented to the, at the time it's called INS, Immigration Naturalization Service offices, and none of them believed her. And she had to help many people, lawyers, politicians, even, and definitely the Perkins family, all the affidavits written about this whole event. And nope. So yeah, so it took her 18 years to finally to get naturalized. By then, she was on her way to suffer from dementia. Yeah.
And so, how old were you when you came to the U.S.?
I was 14. I turned 15 after we arrived in New York and settled down in Boston.
No, you came from Hong Kong, or you came from China?
So China. So I was born totally in China, mainland China, I guess they still call them using that phrase. But at that time, that people try to distinguish China with Taiwan, so they call it mainland China. I was probably among the first teenagers, or I'm also sometimes thinking I might be the only one because I haven't found another teenager. My person my age came out of China, legally immigrated from China in during that time, in that era, during that era. And so yeah, so I was born in mainland China and came out. Uh,
And you were able to come legally to
yes.
the States. Now, were you a U.S. citizen at that time?
No. So uh, once China reopened to the West, to America, to the West in general, then Americans and Europeans and all that, they just flooded into China, right? Curious about what this world, what this world looked like behind a closed door for a better part of 3 decades. And so my mother, they meaning Chinese government, discovered that my mother was fluent in English. English was practically her first language or her native language, right? She started speaking it when she was 10 months old. So she became a translator for many of these people. And one of them was a physician from Mass General Hospital. And he helped my mother uh, regain the connection or communication with her American families here. And then from that point on, they began to process her visa to come out as a research scholar. And then I was like a minor, tagging onto her passport coming out. So we were all on a non-immigratable visas at that time. I was on a student visa. Yeah, I came
I
out as
will tell you this is story, Richard. It's the more I talk to you, the deeper and more rich it becomes. I really appreciate you coming here today to talk about it. The name of the book series is Spring Flower. I really and it's highly engaging, and I hope that you will go get it. You can get it at all your booksellers and at Amazon and all that kind of stuff, and or you can go by to his website, which is Yangtze River by the Hudson Bay site or .site, and or just what I would do is I would just I would Google Richard Hsung, and that's Hsung. And Richard, I want to thank you so much. I got to go, but I've enjoyed this conversation. You're going to have to come back. I'm telling you.
I would
When
love to come back. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me again. This is already the second time. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. When you get the grandparents' book written, then I'm going to have you back. So
Okay. It's a deal.
just kidding. Richard Song has been our guest. Go to get his book, which is Spring Flower. It's a great piece of literature, and it's a legacy to your wonderful mom. And
Thank you so much.
congratulations.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate your support and encouragement.
You betcha. And Grandma Perkins, you deserve to be heard from. So thanks again.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at kmmedia.pro.